Welcome to ReThink You, bringing you ideas, inspiration, and motivation to start living the life you were created to live. Here is your host, author, trainer, speaker, and coach, and founder of ReThink You, Kim Levings.
Hi there, it's Kim Levings with ReThink You, and welcome back to the ReThink You podcast. Today, I'm really blessed to be introducing you to a friend and a colleague of mine from the Les Brown Motivational Speaker program. Her name is Sandra Chaney, and she is a 7-time best-selling author and a certified empowerment coach. Sandra also does powerful work with nonprofits. So I would encourage you to really read her bio and dig into it because there's so much there. But Sandra was a conqueror of domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual trafficking, and even homelessness. So talk about an overcomer. And Sandra has walked this journey, and she knows how to empower people to get out of that same trap. And, you know, Sandra worked with Clairol Cosmetic Company and Southern Living magazine to produce a video that trained salon stylists on domestic violence in 9 states. And she was one of several women, too, who was featured in Red Book magazine national video promoting women who are conquerors of domestic violence. All that to say that Sandra has a powerful story, and she's written some incredible books, including The Woman Within. It's an inside job, which is one of my favorite titles. And Sandra lives by the motto, everything I do, say, and offer to the world will come from a deep place of love. So I know that you're all going to come to love Sandra as we meet you. And I know that there's a story behind all of that information, Sandra. So why don't you tell us your story?
Well, first of all, Kim, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and to really share. So I appreciate this opportunity. So my story is so vast, and so I'm gonna try to get it down to a nutshell. I grew up in domestic violence, child abuse, and alcoholism, and I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And so, as the oldest, I guess my mom and I took the brunt of a lot of what was going on in the house with my dad, and it affected me in so many ways because at 17, I had had enough and decided I'm leaving. You know, I always tell people I had the good sense to graduate from high school. So I graduated from high school, but I was always told that I would never amount to anything, and therefore I was not basically college material. So when you hear that constantly, after a while you begin to believe it, right? And so I left home, but I left home into the arms of a man who was way older than me and who decided to turn me out on the streets, and which is now considered sex trafficking. But them praying grandmothers, I had a praying grandmother who prayed me up out of the street, out of where I lived, and had me come to a different state, which is honestly my saving grace because I got arrested in the process. Coming to this new state as a young woman, at least for me, I was looking for security. I was looking for someone to love me. I was looking for that place to be because I didn't know who I was. So I married someone who was like my dad. And in marrying someone, like my dad, I ended up with somebody who was abusive. I had a son in this union, and I left when my son was 2 because he put a gun to my head. And I began praying to God and said, if you get me out of this, I'm leaving. And from that point forward, I just began to make a lot of mistakes in my life, trying to figure out how, as a single parent, am I going to raise this child but get myself together? So many mistakes happen with with homelessness, with being a single parent. And then one day, after an attempted suicide, as God would have it, he would send people to me that would begin to speak into my life. And that's really began the journey of how I got from there to here. But it was a long journey because it took a lot of work and a lot of belief in myself and a lot of belief in other people's belief in me. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
That is powerful. And I know, as you said, there's a whole lot more to that story. And
yes.
I'm just struck, by the fact that so many of us have to go through some pretty dark journeys, some valleys in order to get to the mountaintop. And as you think back on some of those experiences, Sandra, I'm sure that when you reflect back now, there are a lot of lessons that came out of it. But if you could think of just a couple that kind of are the main ones that you'd like to share, that what did life teach you from all of those really tough situations?
For one thing, I was more resilient than I gave myself credit for. Because to come through that, and to still be alive, to still be standing, somewhere in me, there was a tenacity to say, even though I wanted to give up, something in me wouldn't let me give up, and when I look back on that now, I would have to say a lot had to do with my son, because as a mom, I was like, I can't give up because I have this little person. But there's a part of me that was like, well, I don't know why I'm alive anyway, because no one cares about where I am or what I'm doing. But then there's that voice. One of the things I learned is that there was a voice inside of me that just would not let me give up, no matter how bleak it was, that I still came through it. So I've learned that mistakes that we consider mistakes were really just lessons that we've learned. And it's the choice that we made during that time, because it was the best decision we made because of where we were mentally. And that was a very hard lesson for me to learn, because I felt like I kept making mistakes over and over and over. But each mistake I made, I saw how it led me to something even greater and better, because I learned from that mistake. So that was the biggest thing that I learned, that it wasn't necessarily a mistake, but it was a lesson that came to teach me something. And I think if we look at the things that we do that way, we won't be so hard on ourselves, because it came to teach us something to make us a better version of ourselves.
Really good. And so true. We need to fail forward. Failure is part of the growth process. And, discovering your resilience. What else did you find that you learned along the way that's, because I know you connected your journey to what is now your powerful mission and vision and what you're working on. So any other lessons that are bridges into your mission? And then feel free to start talking about how you ended up doing what you're doing now, how you've brought that forward.
So I did end up going, to college for a little while, and discovering that I really don't want to do this. And I think partly because I don't know if I saw myself as college material, given everything that was in my mind and that I had to release. But I ended up working in corporate America, and I ended up just reinventing myself and trying to become this person that opposite of what people said that I was going to be. And while I loved corporate America, what it did was it left me empty, because I came into it empty. I think when we go through things like that, we go through so much, we try to pretend. And I recognized I was pretending so much that I was always empty, right? And so I was searching for something outside of myself to make myself happy. You can't do that. No one else is responsible for your happiness but you. And that took me a long time to learn, that I'm responsible for my own happiness. And so I started volunteering at a battered women's shelter, because a friend suggested that I do that. I went to the shelter to discover. So let me just say this. I didn't know I was a battered woman. Let me make that very clear. I had no idea. I thought what my parents went through was normal. I thought that it was normal to yell, to scream, to fight. I'm talking physically. I thought all of that was normal. So I didn't know I was battered until I went to the shelter and saw that these women had the same story as me. My story was their story. And it's like the light bulb went off in my head, and I'm going, wow. So now what do I do with this? Because everything I've gone through, I began to recognize wasn't just for me, that it was really for other people. But I had to figure out what did that, because I hear that all the time. What you go through is not just for you, it's for other people. What does that mean? How do you translate that into my purpose? Because it was a painful journey for me. It was very, very painful to have my son watch, me go through an abusive situation. It was very painful for me to think that I wanted to end my life, because I didn't think I was going to amount to anything. All these things are painful, and I'm still trying to search and find myself. Working in this shelter, I discovered so much about me. I discovered, like I said, that I was resilient, but I also discovered I didn't love me. I did not love me. And so while I'm doing all these great things, or at least I think I am, I had no love for Sandra, no self-love, because everything I did was try to please everybody else. And so I've also discovered there are levels to this healing process. I'm still healing now from some things. There is a level. So even though I thought I had healed because I'd gone to therapy, I'm still healing because now I'm finding out, oh, I'm a bad woman. So that in itself was a major lesson. But that began the journey of how I got to here, because when I heard their story, I recognized, oh, wow, people need to hear this. And what ended up happening was I started working in the community, started sharing my story with other people and bringing awareness to domestic violence and sex trafficking. And yeah, that's how we got here.
I think that's wonderful. And, many times I know when I coach individuals, if they're not sure what to do with their lives, I often recommend to them that they go volunteer, go serve your community. Because if you start volunteering, in the course of that, you could find your purpose, you could find your passion and your joy. And your story is a great example of that. And I think that I also wanted to sort of call out what you said there about the fact that we never stop growing and we're continually learning. And, I love Les Brown's quote when he said, you may be done with your past, but your past is not done with you.
Ooh,
and there's still sometimes so many parts of ourselves that are still broken. And I like to say, oh yeah, no, everything's great. And oh no, it's not great. Oh, it's great. No, it's not great. So things will keep surfacing and it's just part of becoming who you're meant to be. So thank you for pointing that out. So people don't think that because we're doing what we're doing, that we have it all together. It's a growth process. We just may be further down the path than some others. But tell me a little bit about everything that you are doing. How has things grown from there? Tell me about some of the books that you've written and, how you've sort of ushered this call on your life forward and how you're blessing other people in the process.
So, working in the shelter obviously helped really to propel me into what I'm doing, because the shelter workers or the executive director at that time saw something in me. And it's amazing how people see things in you that you don't see in yourself, right? And so, that's that. Let me borrow your belief in me, because right now I can't see what you see. So if you say so, okay, fine. And that's kind of where I was in that stage of my life. But they sent me to speaker training and all these other trainings because they really wanted me to get out in the community. And that actually propelled me into speaking around the country. It propelled me into writing my very first book, which was called Give It to Her, A Gift of Healing and Restoration. And that book actually came out in 2005, the first edition, and the second edition was 2013. But I started writing that book, not because I really wanted to, but because I was led to write it. And it was 15 years in the making. But that executive director saw something in me, and she propelled me to have me to keep pushing. And because of that, that's how this book came about. And I remember the first reaction I got when the book came out, because, again, I'm still fighting these, I'm unbecoming the things that people thought I was going to become. I'm unbecoming all these negative thoughts. And I go, who's going to want to read my book? Well, I published the book, and a friend of a friend bought the book for her daughter, because her daughter was in a situation and they were trying to save her. She bought the book. Her daughter read the book while she was on vacation. And because of my book, Kim, the young lady left a very volatile relationship. Had I not written that book, so it goes back to, we all have a purpose. We've all been called to do something. And if we don't do it, the persons that are attached to us or that are waiting on us may not ever get to be who they're meant to be, or even come through what they need to come through, because we didn't do what we were supposed to do. So I'm thinking, if I had not written that book, what would have happened to her? So that book propelled into The Woman Within. It's an inside job, which is now in its third edition. Is dropping. The ebook dropped last week. The paperback is getting ready to drop. because I'm evolving as a woman. That woman within, there's always something in me. I'm evolving every level, even being in Les Brown's Power Voice system. I'm evolving even in that and discovering things about me. So I'm writing because I want women to understand that I know I understand your plight. Because I am you. I'm not just my sister. I'm a keeper. I am my sister. And so I do this work to empower women so that they can heal their mind, to transform their minds and heal their souls, so you can live your best in life and business, because we are purposed. We all came here with a purpose. It is up to us to discover what that purpose is.
Such powerful stuff, Sandra. Thank you. Because you're right. If you don't speak your message, if you don't bring your message forward, whose life will not be changed? I know that some of our fellow speakers and authors have said that, we're learning that it's selfish not to share our message and to hide behind the curtain of insecurity and self-doubt and say, well, nobody's going to listen to my voice. So thank you for sharing that, because there are people out there who need what is becoming more and more available as people like yourself find the voice and find the restoration from that. What were you saved to do as a result of that experience? But I'm sure that there was sometimes, as you said, you continually evolved, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. And I definitely will keep in the show notes, we'll make notes of the book, the third edition coming out. But I wanted you to speak for a moment. I know sometimes in life, even though we start figuring out our purpose and we get on track, there are also times we get off track and suddenly you can't see the forest for the trees and you realize, wait a minute, why am I stuck here again? Share with us a couple of those moments, if you're vulnerable enough to share some times when you just didn't get off very well, or you still have bad days, because I want people to know that it's not a perfect ride to the top. It's a bumpy one. So share with us what you can.
Yeah. So, there have been many different, I call them seasons, in all our lives, but just in the life of this country as well. Right. And so I remember vividly when we had the real estate debacle. Remember when real estate, it all crashed and everybody was losing their homes and, and things like that. I just remembered losing every contract that I had, because I'm a full-time entrepreneur. It'd be 17 years November. And I remembered contracts, like kind of sort of like now, contracts were dry. Nothing was happening. And, mortgages due, all these other things. And I just remembered getting depressed. And I remember vividly one day, my husband was already at work. So I am remarried, by the way. So let me just clarify that. I'm remarried to an awesome man. But I remember him, we was at work and I woke up like the weight of the world was on my shoulder because I had no contracts, and I'm the kind of person, I believe in not having somebody just take care of me. Like, I have a lot to offer the world. So I'm going to do my part, is how I see it. And nothing, no matter what I did, I was applying for jobs. Either I was overqualified, underqualified, the job, it was just so many things going on. And I woke up one day and I said, you have to get out of this house. Because I remembered when I attempted suicide. And not that was coming again, but the feelings of depression were weighing down. And I remember I got up, I got dressed, and I called a friend and I said, and she didn't answer. And I left her a message and said, please call me back. I need to talk to you. I remember Starbucks is one of my favorite coffees. I remember going at a Starbucks car or something. And I went to go get some Starbucks. I got back in my car. She still hadn't called. I pulled up to my house and I said, God, please have her call me, because I don't know if I go back into this house. I was that because nothing, and I could not see the forest before the trees. I felt like giving up. I felt like, I can't believe I've come this far to go backwards. Who does that? this can't be right. And so I felt like I was the only one going through it, to be quite honest. Not that the whole world wasn't suffering, but in that moment, that's what it felt like to me. I began to feel like a failure. It was all these things, because now my business is, nothing is happening in my business. Right as I was putting the key in the door, my girlfriend called, and I went to her house, and I just sat there and talked and cried, because there are times where you are going to feel that way. And it's okay to cry. It's okay to curse. It's okay to do whatever you need to do. But it's also okay to reach out to a trusted person. You have to do that. And although it didn't change the circumstance, but I felt better knowing that there was somebody else that I could lean on. And I did get through it. It took a minute. Like, I had to ask for help, which we don't like to do. I had to ask for help. And eventually we got through it, because what I did was I changed my thought process. I recognized I'm still alive. I still have a roof over my head. I'm still eating. You know what I mean? I'm still doing all these things. No, I can't go out and pay $80 for a steak. Okay, that might be overrated anyway. So it's like I can still find things to do in order to keep myself happy. And what it taught me was to get back to basics and live a simpler life, because material things and all that other stuff will weigh you down. Get back to the simplicity of things. So my husband and I, our date nights, instead of going to a restaurant, we would go by a pier and sit on the pier, eat some ice cream, and have our feet hang off the pier like little kids. That's what we did.
Oh, that's wonderful, Sandra. I wanted to call out a few things there, because I know sometimes people listen to a podcast and, really wonderful golden nuggets just pass them by. So I like to draw attention to them, because I've seen a couple of themes emerge. The one that you mentioned earlier was your resilience, your ability to pull yourself back and bounce back. But now I wrote down acceptance and vulnerability. So that vulnerability, being able to ask for help, I think is so important. I really want to emphasize that, because any of us who've been in a place of hopelessness know that showing the vulnerability to go and ask for help is the first step out of the hole, because you can't stay in a helpless, dark hole on your own.
Yes.
The minute you ask for help, it's like shining a flashlight into that dark hole. And then, as you said, that acceptance of things that you can't control. It's almost like that saying that, accept the things that you can, and, pray about the things that you can't, and then gratitude.
Yes.
So I have resilience, vulnerability, acceptance, and gratitude as 4 themes that you've highlighted in this. And those are words I see emanating from you as a person. I just see that shining out from you, and that gratitude and getting back to the simple. And I think certainly during this COVID pandemic, people have discovered that material things come and go. You can't build everything around material things. So getting back to simplicity and gratitude, being thankful for the things that you do have. Just some powerful things I wanted to emphasize. So let me not take any more of the camera time, because I'm just loving your story. So tell us a little too, Sandra. I brought forward those things, vulnerability, resilience, acceptance, and gratitude. What were some other gifts and talents that you discovered in yourself? Because you've mentioned now that you've been an entrepreneur for 17 years, and I know that you do great consulting with nonprofits. So anybody listening to this needs to know that Sandra's also a nonprofit strategist, and she actually helps nonprofits figure out how to raise money and how to actually succeed. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial pursuits and what gifts and talents you've discovered on that part of your journey.
So it's amazing how you really don't know who you are or the gifts. You think you don't have gifts, but you really do have them. And sometimes they just come so natural, you can't see it. And I have to go back to the shelter, because it really all started there. So the entrepreneur, it's really started from the shelter. Also, the nonprofit work started from the shelter. And I am a grant reviewer. I review grants on the federal level for the government. And I've been doing that for 20 years. And that's really what kicked off my entrepreneurial journey that I'm on now. And to this day, I don't know how my name got submitted to a federal agency to review grants, but someone submitted my name and I get a phone call to start reviewing these grants while I'm still working, at this shelter. And I didn't have a clue, at least I didn't think I did, of how to review a grant. But working in the shelter gave me the skill set to not only learn how to write them, because I would help the director write grants, but also gave me insight to how they interact with donors. What does fundraising look like, and all these other things, in addition to the other side of me where I was still speaking in the community. So my speaking skills are being developed. And now this side of me where I'm understanding nonprofits and service and what they need and do. And so that's how that actually began. So for over 20 years, I've been reviewing, I've chaired the panels, I've had oversight over some of the panels for the government. And so that parlayed into me starting my own nonprofit. I don't have it now, but that parlayed into me leaving the shelter, starting my own nonprofit, making mistakes, because I made mistakes, and then being led to go to the other side and take a skill set that I learned and to help nonprofits. And the only reason why I did that was because I had a mentor in the federal government who I used to review grants for. She retired and she called me up and she said, "You have a skill set. Here's this somebody believing in you again, right? This is somebody who saw something in me I didn't see in myself." At every level, there is somebody who sees this, which is, I'm having a light bulb moment myself right now, but yeah. So anyway, so she called and she said, do you have a skill set? Nonprofits need you. You know what they need. You know how to write grants. You know what donors and people are looking for. You really need to do this. And I said, and now, mind you, I left the job in 2003. I didn't really, and I was doing other things like speaking. I didn't start the nonprofit work until 2011 because she said, "You have this skill set." I didn't see it until she said it in 2011. And so 8 years later, I started doing work around nonprofits and adding that to the things that I've learned on this journey about myself, in addition to realizing I can speak and develop programming and write books and things like that. So that was another skill set that I learned about myself. And I keep evolving because every year the government will give me even more responsibility. So this past year, I had an opportunity to oversee and be a panel manager for a major federal agency where I oversaw 3 panels. And I oversaw the work that they did and all those other things. So that was another gift or another level of leadership that I didn't know that I had, but they saw that in me.
So important, that belief that other people have in us, and they will see that piece of us. So thank you for sharing that. And I've just loved listening to your story, Sandra. So one more question. How would you because I know that you've got this nonprofit work on these powerful books that you're writing. How would you put your own mission or purpose statement into a nutshell? How is the world going to be different when you've moved on?
So I believe that my mission really is to come from a place of transparency and to help women especially transform their minds, heal their souls, because this is soul work that we're doing. It is mind, but it's so much about our soul and who we see ourselves as, so that they can live their best in life and business. And for me, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if your life isn't together, whatever business you choose isn't going to be together. It's going to be just as nutty, I like to say, as maybe your personal life. And so for me, when I feel like my legacy is really to help people see who they are authentically, so that the work that they do will also leave a legacy, and that we're going to all leave this world in a better place, because I chose to live my life as a life of transparency. And I chose to speak into the lives of people. And and be there to support in any way that I can, whether it's the nonprofit world, because but again, nonprofits are also being run by women, men too, but women as well. So to me, they go together, they go hand in hand. If I'm going to help your nonprofit, I'm going to help you too, so that you can heal and become that better person, so that the people that are under you, when you move on, you will have left a lasting legacy, as I will have too, because I have done my own soul work and I'm now passing it on to you.
Oh, that's beautiful, Sandra. Thank you. So, as we wrap up here, as you think about the rest of this year, what is on your get it done list? What are your front and center goals right now? What are you excited about? What do we see Sandra doing for the rest of 2021? What's on the agenda?
Well, I'm working on book 4. Yeah, I'm working on book number 4. I'm excited about that. I am on a speaking tour, with one of our fellow mastermind TRI folks. And so several of us are on a speaking tour, and we are just going around the country virtually, empowering other women to remind them of who they are in this world, and that if we can do it, they can do it too. So the biggest thing for me is to continue to write and to help others bring their voice, whether in writing or whether in speaking to this world. So that is where my focus is right now, is working on that. And I can't forget, I host a podcast. I launched my podcast in January for nonprofits. It's called The Profit in Nonprofit. And on there, I do bring in guests, but I also talk about how to build and fund your nonprofit, from the ground up. So that is my focus right now, my book, my nonprofit, and just empowering women to be the very best that they can be for themselves and for others.
Absolutely wonderful, Sandra. So, this has been a pleasure. I know that people are going to enjoy hearing your story. What would you like the listeners in particular to remember about you as they finish listening to this podcast and they say to a friend, I listened to this amazing woman, Sandra, and they say one thing, what that you like that thing to be that they would remember about you?
That everything I do, say, and offer the world comes from a deep place of love.
Love it. Deep place of love.
Yes.
What a great way to end, Sandra. Thank you. And, thank you for doing the work that you do. And I certainly hope that this interview is going to reach people that need to be reached, because that's why we put our voices out in the world, and keep doing what you're doing on the speaking tour and the podcast and your books, and just, stopping your train for a few minutes here to speak to the ReThink You audience. I much appreciate it. So thank you.